Elitha.
Thanks, Cynthia.
And thank you for giving up your time today to have a chat to us about emotional fitness and recovery. And it's such a huge topic. And I really wanted to chat to you because you're a woman that, you know, I've come to know over the past few years. And, you know, also with some of the dynamics that have happened in your family, your children, you're a mum. But, you know, you're a high-flying corporate woman as well. I mean, you're at the top of the tree there doing, you know, working, and from what I understand, a fairly male-dominated industry.
Indeed.
Yeah, and bringing femininity and empowerment, and also to having to clean out the cupboards in your own life from some stuff that, you know, like we say, most people spend the second half of their life getting over the first. We've all got stuff. But I wanted to chat to you today about, you know, we talk about empowered femininity a lot, you and I, you know, and not having to grow a pair of balls to be powerful, because we kind of didn't come in with them and we don't need them. You know, we have breasts and a uterus, and the way we're wired, it doesn't mean that makes us, you know, I often hear and see women that you know, they try and talk about having to grow balls and become like men to be powerful in that male-dominated environment. And I don't know, we've spoken about this a bit, but I find whenever I'm working with, you know, football teams or defence forces or anywhere where it's male-dominated, the last thing I need to try and do is be like a male. You know, we don't bring anything new to the, you know, empowered women. I think it's an interesting term, and it means different things to different women. So I'd just be interested in your thoughts. Let's just start off with that. You know, what's that? How does that play out for you in the workplace?
I'm very much at the beginning of that journey. And yes, I think for the first 46 years, how many years would that be in my career? First 26 years of my career, that's all I knew was the male energy. My female energy was locked up. And now that I've started to unlock some of that female energy, I can now use that in that corporate setting, where I'm not relying on the male energy for my power, but on my female energy. And that being, to me, meaning being much closer to, connected to my heart, and being vulnerable and understanding. And it seems to be, I think, well, equally powerful, if not more powerful than the male energy. And it almost disarms the ego when you're in a situation which is fueled by ego, to be able to bring the heart into it and bring it down and actually conflict resolve, as opposed to a power struggle and a clash.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as we've spoken about, it's actually not really, when we're talking about the empowered feminine, we know when a male gets into his empowered feminine, you know, we've all got masculine and feminine energy, the capacity, as you sort of said, to stand up, speak up, be logic, single focused, and the feminine side of our brain about being, you know, community focused, empathetic, compassionate. And we're both big fans of Brené Brown, aren't we? She does some beautiful, you know, her stuff on vulnerability is just groundbreaking.
Absolutely. Actually, I was so pleasantly surprised. Through my firm, I've just attended a management, or leadership, I should say, training course, and they only send 70 of their 56,000 employees per year. And the course is actually offered by the New South Wales Business School.
Oh, wow.
And I was blown away by the content of this course. It was about connecting with your heart.
Wow.
Understanding what your trigger points are, how to be assertive as opposed to aggressive and passive. And the focus was emotional fitness work as opposed to the traditional management training style that you would expect from a course like that. Yes, so obviously a lot of your learning is clearly making its way. It doesn't necessarily mean it's practically being carried out yet, but certainly my generation and management level that I am at, who are the next leaders in the corporations, are getting exposed to this kind of training. So that's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, and I think, isn't it refreshing when we sort of see they're looking at the whole person, the whole picture.
The whole picture. We even did a mindfulness meditation.
Oh, wow.
In the training course.
Because you would have done a lot of training courses over the years in your...
Yes, I suppose that's true, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so this was refreshing.
I suppose what's an interesting question to have a look at is, I'm very aware that you're a woman that walks the walk, and you've done a lot of walk, and we're going to talk about your little trek through the Camino trail, by the way, because I mean, Elitha's just, you know, done some fascinating things, and as a part of your healing journey, that trek on the Camino trail was, you know, and I'll get you to tell us about that in a moment. But I suppose what I'm interested in is what your thoughts around, do you think, because it's highly likely that there are some people that attended that workshop that are closed and may have only taken snippets or not really even got it, or it might have been, you know, a bit airy-fairy for them, or a bit mung bean, new age or whatever. Do you think that it's because you've done so much work that you receive so much, or do you think it would have been that powerful for anyone attending?
I felt very comfortable because I wasn't confronted, and a lot of the issues I had to face wasn't the first time I had faced them. Yeah. It was very interactive, so we actually did exercises with each other, which meant you were kind of forced to be vulnerable to somebody you didn't know. That we all work in the same organisation, but I'd never spoken more than 10 minutes to any one person in the group. We were 12 people. But I was surprised at how quickly people's guards actually came down. As soon as one person was able to be totally open and vulnerable and reveal something about themselves, the other person was able to get there. So I think, yes, some obviously wouldn't have got as much out of it, but I'm actually surprised at how much people did open up and actually truly connected. And I think for that reason, I think they probably walked away with quite a bit. And that's what I felt in there.
Sorry.
No.
I think the you know, in other interviews that we've done, you know, connection's a big word, and that desire to connect and actually belonging through authenticity, not connecting and conforming, but connecting because there's a safe space to be authentic. And I suppose I think of, it's a bit like the psychology of a dance floor at a wedding or an event. Once someone gets up there and just lets their wild thing on the floor, everybody says, oh, fuck it, I'm getting up and having a dance and just going to do my thing. And it's not about everyone dancing the same, unless you're doing the Macarena or something, but it's about being able to get up and just do your thing on the dance floor, and that freedom to just express. And in a workshop like that, where there's a freedom to connect, but be authentic at the same time, I think that's a liberating thing.
It was amazing, and people were encouraged to talk about mistakes and things that they are uncomfortable about themselves, and they were rewarded and complimented for bringing that to the table. From the outset, the speaker said, the journey in the corporate world is about failing, because if you're going to grow and get better, you have to accept that you need to fail to get there. And that's sort of the basis on which the course is based. You are going to fail, and we're encouraging you to be brave enough to do it, even if you fail, because that means you're going to move forward.
And that old cliche, it's only a failure if there's no lesson. You know, if you fail and you get the lesson, you know, it's about progress and learning, isn't it?
Progress and learning.
Which we try and teach our kids that, but we tend to forget that in adult life.
We do. We've got that sense of, well, I guess it also depends on how you grew up. And I guess that was a big part of my journey, is the certain mold that you grow up with. And then if you choose to come out of that mold and view the world differently, that's a big exercise to undergo, to almost, what's the word you use, rebirth yourself.
Yeah.
Remold yourself. And yes, I've had a number of layers to break through that's come through my childhood, family, tradition, community that I was raised in.
Do you think, you know, for people watching at home, you know, the cultural environment where you grew up in as a little girl, do you think, I mean, because there are, you know, with, you know, where we grew up and how we grew up, do you think where you grew up had an impact?
Yeah, absolutely. On who I am.
Yeah.
Or was.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Hugely. You know, always love. I was fortunate to grow up in a loving home, in a loving community, but a community that I guess didn't have a certain level of emotional skills. and so that there's just no opportunity to pass that on. And as a result of that, I guess there's just certain things you don't quite ever learn. And the traditional way of a subservient female to a male-dominated family environment, traditional role models, emotion did not play much of a role. If anything, was kind of an impediment to life. It was regarded as that way, and I was a highly emotional child, so it was an annoyance and frowned upon. So I didn't get to learn how to process my emotions, how to express them appropriately, what they meant, and how to really actually cherish them as a part of my moral compass and help me guide. So so that environment, very strict environment, the environment's thoughts around sexuality and intimacy, very limited, very strictly influenced by the church. And in my days, I don't go to church anymore.
Where was your hometown when you grew up as a little girl?
Durban, yeah. So on the east coast of South Africa. It was a very English community, and I was an Afrikaans-speaking person in an English community, so I was a minority number. That was an interesting experience.
So you speak Afrikaans still?
At home, yes.
Yeah. Do you?
It's my home language, yes.
So when you're around your parents, you speak Afrikaans?
Yes. So the girls have always...
your children, your daughters?
My daughters have always heard Afrikaans. They understand it intuitively. They speak back in English, but they're 100% fluent in understanding it. Yeah.
So for those Aussies that we know the term Afrikaans, what dial is it? Dutch based? Is it a Dutch based language?
Yeah, it's a Dutch derivative. So when the Dutch came around the southern tip of South Africa, it was the halfway point to their trading route on their ships, and the sailors were getting scurvy, etc., for the lack of fresh stuff. So they stopped there and they formed a settlement to grow fresh vegetables and fruit. And then the ships would stop and pick up fresh produce as they carried on. So the Dutch formed a settlement there. And I guess just over time, the language, they called it Kitchen Dutch. It's sort of watered down and got simplified and perhaps mixed a little bit with the other languages that they got exposed to, maybe some of the African languages. There were lots of French, Dutch, etc., people settling in that community is where it's from.
So the journey that you've been on, now as a single, footloose and fancy-free career woman, or maybe not? Well, we'll talk about that later. Secret squirrel girl's business. But I'd really love for you to tell our viewers, because I have a few people that ask me about this journey, and many people that work in recovery, and I'm a walker. I love to walk. In my very early days in recovery, getting up in the morning and just walking, that one foot in front of the other when you're just trying to reboot your life, is very therapeutic. And being in Mother Nature, and there are some amazing walks, and one that's always been on my to-do list since I read Shirley MacLaine's book, and many people talk about it, but you actually did it. So talk to us about walking the Camino.
It's a must-do for anybody.
Because you did it on your own.
I did it on my own. I would love to do the whole journey.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't about the 1,000 kilometers or the, how far I got and how fast I did it. For me, it was just, I had this incredible desire to just be with myself. So I wasn't in an organized group. I did it the glamping way. I didn't carry a backpack. I had my accommodation booked, and I had somebody transfer my bag. So I just had a little day pack with me, and I had notes with me, and that was really scary in the beginning because it took me an hour to get out of my first town. I'm like...
So you say notes, you had a map on where you're supposed to go?
It's not a map because it's a pilgrimage route that's signed by little rocks and little yellow arrows, and there's some descriptions. When you get to the fork in this road, take the left fork, and then when you go under the bridge, go over the stream. It's that sort of, and you're constantly like, I am not sure if this is the right stream we're talking about. Well, in the beginning it was like that. So I guess like anything that's really new, I was out of my comfort zone. It was cold, it was raining, so 4 degrees and raining, and here are my notes, and I'm looking for the street, which is where the route starts in this town that I'm at.
So where did you start?
Oh, don't ask me names of towns.
Okay.
I can't remember
So
now anymore.
For the people watching this, from what I understand, to walk the full Camino, it's about a 5 week. How far is the full Camino?
It's 1,000 kilometers, so I think they say about 30 days.
Yeah.
If you dedicate it. And the traditional route starts in France, and you go over the Pyrenees to Santiago. So they all culminate in Santiago. The one I did is one of the recognized pilgrimages, but it's called the winter one because I was in December. It's a little bit further south, so you don't get snow and sleet and that kind of thing. And I just picked a point which will allow me to get to Santiago in 10 days' time. So my journey was 10 days on foot. And that just led to just asking strangers for help in a language I couldn't speak. And I just had the most amazing people sent to me to guide me on this trek when I honestly didn't know where to go. This young chap who was, I think he was 19, I think he tried to tell me he was studying. And I'm sort of trying to ask him where this street is. And he's like, are you going to that town? Yeah, yes, I am. He's like, really? Are you walking to? Yeah. He's like, okay, I'll show you. He ended up walking for 2 hours with me until I was well established on the route. It was beautiful. And everywhere I went, I had these incidences of people who would walk and indicate something to me, or I was soaking wet and I was so cold, and I knocked on this door of this lady and I said, my phones have run out. I'm supposed to call this driver for my next accommodation and I don't know where I am. She said, oh, no problem. He's a family friend of ours.
Wow. Yeah, so divine intervention in some places.
And every day, knowledge and insights just popped in my head. I couldn't find these signs. I couldn't find these yellow signs, and they were in front of me every time. And I started to think, why can't I see them? And it's like, because they're not necessarily where you expect them to be. Why don't you just look a little bit further ahead or look up, and then you find them?
Isn't that interesting? So new terrain in the brain from the way you would receive data in the Western world.
Absolutely.
And direction. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the terrain is so varied. You know, I went through farming areas, and you get the piggeries, and then you get the horse area, and then you get the vineyards, and from the farmland you go through forests, and just beautiful big ancient chestnut trees and fairy mushrooms, red ones popping up.
Wow.
And just magical, up and down, and old stone homes, and quiet. It's winter. The shops are all closed. People are all in their homes. It's just quiet with the rain drizzling. Heaven.
So the woman that started the Camino and the woman that came back, how did you shift? What do you notice about yourself that's different from having done that walk?
Day six was, I remember, and I'll never forget the moment I'm walking and something just went so calm. It's like click. And I was within me, and the calm and the peace and the happiness that I have never felt before. It's like I have come home.
Wow.
It was a physical feeling in that moment.
And there's that beautiful saying, home is where the heart is. And you know, the work under the umbrella of emotional fitness, and you know, you and I have been talking over the years about that journey. And you know, I always say to clients, you know, I have an agenda, and that's to help you find your happily ever after, but that's got to start with your marriage to yourself. Because as much as we'd all, you know, it's often called a fairy tale or a myth to have a happily ever after, but I truly believe it's the hardest life assignment there is. And the hardest person to have a happily ever after is with yourself. Mm-hmm. And you know, I have people talking about the 5 love languages and studying what their partner's doing, and I always say, if you're going to study the 5 love languages, see how you are implementing them with yourself first. You know, let's get this marriage rebooted. Let's get head, heart and body all on the same page. And that beautiful drop, that click. You know, I will say for myself over the last 24 years, every now and then they say the longest journey's from the head to the heart, and we talk about the penny drop. it's almost like, because I know, you have been a woman who's been, if you think of that journey from the head to the heart, like a jungle terrain. And I was taken, I won a riding competition to go to the Amazon jungles in Peru in the beginning of my journey back in 1991, actually, before I put the booze down. And there was a dropping of a penny. And I think sometimes when we geographically shift and we get out of our own way and we take ourselves, and Mother Nature, she is a formidable teacher. And sometimes, I was dropped in the heart of the Amazon and I had this penny drop where I realised, as much as I loved the father of my children, he wasn't my life partner, and I needed to change my alcohol. I needed to change some things. And we never know that when we make those big changes, as in our adult life, when that penny drops and you get this knowing whether people are going to come with you or not, and no one gets a guarantee, but I think if you know that you'll go with you when that penny drops, and whether it's a challenge or whether it's you are in the right place at the right time, in wherever you were on that day 6 of the Camino, that divine feeling of grace is a beautiful thing. I think once you get that natural high, that place, you never lose that. No. That's hard earned, isn't it? You don't just show up there. You just kind of think, you had ploughed through, and Mother Earth, I use that saying a lot, earth and heart are the same letters, and silence and listen are the same letters. And often when we're in that silent place, I know, my husband and I walk in the mornings, and just sometimes walking in silence next to him, we walk through the graveyard, is just that silence of just one foot in front of the other, being present to the moment. That is a healing you can't get anywhere else.
And I think it started with the journey and things that you and I talked about, what I could do to help me get me through those times where you literally don't know how you're going to get up in the morning. Starting the routine of going for a walk in the morning. I treasure that time. There is nothing that can stop me from getting up at 5, putting beautiful music in my ears and just hitting the pavement, whether I feel like walking slowly or fast or running. And I even dance. I'm going, thank God it's 5 o'clock in the morning and it's dark and no one's out there to see how weird I am. Singing at the top of my voice, terrible pitch. And practicing dance movements. Just me.
Yeah.
Just me, and just coming back and just feeling, as you say, the music massaging your heart, and then to have my time to reflect and to journal and to meditate. I look forward to the daybreak every day. I can't wait to go to bed to have that experience again in the morning. It's almost like an addiction, like that. Beautiful closeness, and love it.
And I often find, when I'm working with women, having had some marriages come to, an end in my own life, and knowing that time, especially if you're a mother, that you need to do a reboot, and taking yourself on a walk, almost like courting yourself again, is such a gentle and therapeutic thing to do. And in just watching you put one foot in front of the other, Elitha, and learn how to find your happily ever after again as a single woman, having been a married woman. And you and I have spoken about married life's not for everybody, but people that love it. And but for people that go into married life, like we both did as younger women, without a solid marriage to themselves, you could be married to the Dalai Lama. It ain't gonna work. It doesn't matter how good that man or female is. If you're out of sync with your own heart, disconnection is going to happen.
And as you very well know, codependency was such an issue for me. And as soon as I need to rely on the other person for anything emotionally, as opposed to being able to find it within myself, you're just tipping the boat all the time. It's going to be rocky, and you make choices that are less than ideal for yourself. You're not respecting yourself and going, I need to choose the best for me. Yes, so that was a big part of my journey, coming home and feeling self-love, total self-acceptance, self-love, seeing the beauty in all of me, making peace with my dark side. That is, as you say, crucial. And hence
your wedding ring.
My wedding ring to myself.
Yeah.
That was the happiest day. So Camino was my honeymoon after getting married to
how
myself.
Beautiful is that? Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing to do. I remember, I think I've told you, I mean, my wedding ring I bought after I wrote my first book as a single woman, and I think that, in an ideal world, we would teach our sons and daughters to marry themselves before you ever try it with anybody else.
Yes.
But you don't know what you don't know until you crash a few times.
Yes. Well, we can't choose when life will send us that information and when we'll have that opportunity to learn it. But yes, as you say, it's such a big part for me. This journey is that I can impart it to my daughters, and they can have the benefit of those skills and that knowledge at an earlier age in their lives. And obviously they're going to have their journeys and what they need to learn. But I'm just so excited that they can have this knowledge and access the excitement of the journey early on in life, as opposed to it feeling like it's so hard later on when you realize what you now got to go back and deal with, as opposed to dealing with it bite-sized from a young age.
Yep.
Yes, very exciting.
So in that moment on day 6, where that calm kind of washed through you and the rainbow came out, and it's almost like you can sometimes feel when a chapter's done, can't you? Like that was a harrowing chapter, but I did the work and there's this fresh page ahead of me now. And so when you came back, because you went at the end of last year, so Christmas, just before Christmas?
Just before Christmas, yes.
And how's that played out since coming back and the new year starting for you? What have you noticed?
It's truly like a new beginning of my life, a new chapter, a new determining what I want, and that I can choose what I want. I don't have to accept anything now, because I really don't need anything. I have myself, and I'm comfortable, and I can now make choices that are the best, in my best interest, I guess.
It's been interesting, you're talking about your dating, as a career woman, as a single mum. And I think one of the really impressive things that I've observed with you is you're now, and self-love is all about boundaries and saying no. And I'm noticing that, you've really taken on board, we teach people how to treat us. And if you're noticing that there's any disrespect or disconnection, or, I think, as we get older, you don't have my issues of, I'm an alcoholic drug addict, but I think, for people even that don't have those issues with drugs and alcohol, just in that whole dating world, to just be observant of how, and you and other clients have told me that they really notice if the person needs to get smashed on the date, or they need to, and again, having a lovely glass of wine and, is a part of a healthy lifestyle, but for some people it can be excessive, or just noticing, I think, weapons of mass distraction. Are they workaholics? Are they hitting that booze? Are they enjoying that glass of wine, or are they ordering the second bottle when it's long not needed? Or have they had a line of Coke? Do they need a joint? Are they sexualizing this conversation way before that's appropriate? These are things that you tend to notice a little more when
you see it all. If you expose yourself to the dating world, you see it all, and it is fascinating. And I think the word you use there in terms of alcohol is, when are people taking it because they need it, as opposed to when are they having it just because for the pure joy of the whatever they're consuming. And I find that with myself. I might not be technically alcoholic, but I have found how much more I struggle with emotional issues if I do use alcohol. And I say that because I have noticed when I'm having a difficult time at work, so I've got really complex staff issues to deal with, difficult conversations to be had, difficult management issues, and when they emotionally unbalance me, I have found the best thing for me to do is just go, right, no alcohol whatsoever. Somehow the alcohol in my system, that disconnect that it creates, I don't know if the chemicals remain in my system for long, but it just keeps me unbalanced and actually worsens the unbalanced feeling, as opposed to allowing me to come back to balance again. So alcohol. So we're having quite a difficult time at work. A lot of restructuring taking place, and I'm a big part of that at the moment, and having to execute on it, and that's challenging for me. I've never been in that position before. So emotionally, it rocked my boat. So for me, the immediate steps was no alcohol through and through, and solitude time by myself. So whilst it's fun to walk and walk with a friend and have that when everything is good, that's wonderful. But I was walking with a friend regularly, and I said to her, you'll have to excuse me, because for the next few weeks I need time by myself. So I'm going to have to walk by myself, because that's the only time of the day that I can practically do that. But then having that time by myself helps me to rebalance again and finding my feet again in a healthy way.
And I think it's a very important point you made there, because I often say to people, isolation's different to solitude.
Yep.
Isolation's fear-driven, where you're hiding from others. Solitude's love-driven, where, if you think, we plug our mobile phone in and charge up the batteries. Quality solitude, as you sort of said, having a bit of a dance to whoever you're listening to while you're walking, is charging up, your inner batteries. You can't give away what you haven't got. And when, parenting or work or life asks a lot of you, you need to make sure you're fully charged before the day. If you're going to use your mobile phone a lot, you want it fully charged, 100% charged. And many people don't know how to charge themselves up. And whilst we all love a good cup of coffee in the morning, and that's one vice I'm not giving up, I've gone from having perhaps 9 shots of coffee a day to just those in the morning. But I think you made an interesting point, being somebody that has perhaps emotionally medicated, which is very different to being alcoholic. But nonetheless, if you want maximum bang for your buck from your vehicle, if you want to operate and tap your full potential, a personal trainer at a gym doesn't go, let's just hop on the treadmill. Listen, do you want a Magnum, a bucket of KFC while you're there? Because it'll just undermine the progress you're trying to make. And I always say to people, if you've got if you're going through a divorce, if you're going through if you're starting a new job, new school, new degree, new relationship, whatever it is, don't forget alcohol's ethanol. And, it's not about becoming all born again, it's ethanol. It is, it doesn't actually take the edge off. It just anesthetizes your anxiety and saves it for another day. And anxiety is a very important part of listening to that heart's yellow light going, let's slow down. As you're sort of saying, we've got a lot of things to look at here. I want my full attention here, not my anesthetized brain.
And I find it hard to stay connected to my heart and not let my ego start to dominate these situations, which is just a recipe for disaster for me in any event.
And I think that's an interesting thing also too, because a lot of people sort of say, do I go with my head or my heart, or don't follow your bloody heart, you'll end up lost. And I always say, you know what? You want head, heart and body all talking to each other. You want them to have a community meeting every day, which is what, you do on a walk or in a meditation. Because, when the heart makes decisions without having a look at the logic, and also too whether the body is up for that task on the day, it's not a balanced decision. When the logic makes a decision, but the heart's going, it doesn't kind of feel right, or the body's kind of going, but I'm buggered, I need to sleep, that's not going to work either. And that whole, and so we talk about ego self, which we need. I personally don't subscribe to ego being the villain, but we don't want it dominating or running our lives. We don't want to eliminate it either. We certainly want to have a bit of a sense of humour about our ego and consult with our logic. And, we're sitting here with our little sparklies on. Don't we all love to stand up, speak up, dress up and enjoy the vehicle? There's nothing wrong in that. But when it dominates and takes over, we become out of balance, and we talk about that often. It's like being the whole package is where the balance and the challenge is, isn't it?
And I think from the environment that I grew up in, there's some of the elements of the whole package gets shamed. and therefore you don't incorporate it all. For example, the heart. It's not regarded as part of the package in a business environment. There's no space for that. There's no place for that. It should be all logic, And I don't believe that's the most powerful and the most balanced place to be, and the most successful, achieving the most successful outcome.
Absolutely not. And that dominant state, which a male or female can be in, when we're in that dominant masculine ego state, and not listening to sensitivity or poo-pooing feelings. I had a client say to me the other day, Cynthia, feelings aren't facts. I said, well, thank God for that, and facts aren't feelings. But let's have a look at the big decisions you've made in your life. The jobs, the car, the house, the relationships. You can get all the factual data, but you know what? When you drive that baby, or you kiss that person, or you sit in that office chair, how you feel is what's going to make you stay there.
Yep.
You want to have a look at the logistics, but if it doesn't feel good, you're going to have to become an automatic pilot and just go through the bloody motions. And feelings aren't facts, and that's what's so beautiful about them. We listen to a song or watch a movie, it makes us laugh or cry. That's got nothing to do with logical data. It's got to do with the internal world that gets activated. Our fairy lights go on. We have a season, we cry, it rains, the sun comes out, we grow, we learn. And it doesn't have to be, as you sort of said, you came from, and similarly too, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Feeling and fact do not have to be at war with each other, but the body's a vehicle we've got to deliver on, and you can't script that stuff. You and I both know as women, if you've got a sick child up all night, the body's tired, you're going to have to pull back on commitments, otherwise you're going to do something when you're overtired and make a mistake, or compromise your health.
And I think that was the other thing in the environment that I grew up in, is self-care was synonymous with selfish. So many mums and dads on empty tanks, because if you sat down to have a cup of tea, to just give yourself a moment, that is not okay. If you take time away from your family, away from your children, to go away with friends, or just go away by yourself, to just go and reboot and self-care, not okay. So all of that's really new to me, and it's been life-changing to engage in those habits. Which reminds me, my beautiful 10-year-old wrote me a birthday. She drew me a birthday card, and she writes really well. And the one little line is, "And Mummy, you can go on a holiday by yourself."
She gave you a permission slip.
She said, and Mummy, and she said, "You deserve a holiday by yourself."
Oh, she's learning that.
And I thought, oh my goodness, some of this knowledge is passing through.
Beautiful. And I think that's interesting too, because, I'm a fair bit older than you, but I still think that there's a hangover from that mother guilt and that selfishness, as you spoke. And I see there are many women I work with within rehabs, or that are really struggling with a savage addiction. And they will say, I'm not coping with the kids and I feel so selfish and I'm trying to be a good mother. And I was very blessed in my very early recovery, and albeit 24 years ago, the father of my children's a good man. And I was unable, I had to do 50-50. I was flat out rebooting. And when you've had a savage addiction or any kind of emotional trauma, is different to wounding. The death of a marriage is a trauma. And even if the relationship wasn't functional, the marriage in and of itself is a spiritual pledge. And when that has the death of that dream has crashed, there needs to be time allowed to grieve, and everybody grieves differently. And many people use weapons of mass distraction. So they drink, they work, they hide, they get into mothering, people pleasing, putting a Superman or Superwoman cape on and trying to do everything. And I often say, if you think of trauma, let's think of somebody in a hospital that's had some major physical trauma. They've got a broken arm and a broken leg. Now let's say this woman's a mother. You're not going to give this woman a toddler and a newborn to carry down the stairs of the hospital, because she's going to fall. Now that's not going to make her not a good mother. It just means we all understand with physical trauma, this woman's going to need time and support before she can open both arms and run with her children again. She has to, and she is being irresponsible if she doesn't put her physical healing first, because then she can't be, the tap her full potential as a mother. Now, for people and women, I see this, that are coming into emotional recovery and have had a major trauma, a death of a marriage, they're fighting an addiction, whatever it is, they need rehabilitation. And if they want to be a great mother down the track, do the work. And whether you need to go into a rehab or whatever it is you need to do. And, if you haven't, as I said, I'm blessed, the father of my children took the kids 50-50. And I was able to reboot, regroup. Now, it was a while before I could do, and he's always been very fair, but some people don't always have a spouse that's supportive. And, some people, are blessed with parents, good friends. Some women have to go into a halfway house. And there's a lot of work to be done and resources there, which is why, we're partially doing this web series to just take all of the shame and have the conversations around this selfishness tag, this mother guilt that so many women, and can I tell you, I found something really interesting the other day. And it's a concern because, I often say to younger women, yes, you can have it all, but not all at once, and whether you work or have children or do or don't, that's an individual journey. But I think this whole mother guilt, and I see so many young women, and I'm talking, I'm in my late 50s, so a young woman to me is anyone 40 and under, but I'm talking young women and young mothers doing the whole, well, if you're going to be a mother, you're going to need wine o'clock. 5 o'clock is wine o'clock. Now again, I'm not going to get all born again about booze. Having a glass of wine with your girlfriends, oh my God, go for it. Yeah. But when we start to normalise that you're going to need booze if you're going to be a mother, and that's kind of what we all do. And I went in to get Mother's Day cards, have a look at Mother's Day cards recently. My recovery sponsor, her birthday falls around Mother's Day. So I was looking for a card for her, but I must admit I was gobsmacked. I stood in this huge news agency, and the Mother's Day cards, how they're always in a section. And I'm not joking. I reckon about 60% of these cards had booze-related jokes on them about motherhood booze. And that's kind of what you need to get through. And I was concerned.
Yes.
And I think that's not a message, if normalising this for young women, because yes, it'll anaesthetise your anxiety, but you'll crash the next day. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be a bit hungover. And I'm not talking about alcoholic women. I'm talking about women that emotionally medicate and have to have their booze because why? That's their chemical escape, their time to themselves. When in actual fact, when a child realises if we just, mummy goes for her walk, her half an hour walk, rather than having wine o'clock, if mummy has that dawn walk or she does some meditation or the door is shut between 5 o'clock and 5:30 and the kids get to have some screen time because mummy's going to do a meditation. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, because I really see, these women trying to chemically manage overwhelm, anxiety, tiredness, irritability.
And the culture of we, don't admit to how we really feel inside and the struggles we're having in our relationships, and then we don't ask for help. And as a result then, the booze is fashionable, as you say, normalized, and as soon as you get into a little group who does that, the little group grows. It's easy to hang along with people who do things that don't require discipline. It's hard to be the one person
that says, actually, I'm going to have a green tea.
Yes. Yes.
And again too, that peer pressure. We know as women, I think, we're hardwired once we become mothers that, having a community, a daycare, women that you can say, look, can you have the kids a half an hour? I'll have yours next week, is very important. Even if you've got a loving, supporting partner, to have a community of people where kids, sometimes having 3 kids in your yard is easier than just having one because they play. So we do need that community, but then again, I think, what are we teaching our children? And also too, the whole, and we don't want to put fear around alcohol, but a certain, a healthy attitude that, You know, mummy needs downtime. Maybe today it means I'm going to have a few glasses of wine. It's a Friday afternoon, but on Thursday afternoons, mummy goes to yoga. Wednesday mornings, mummy does her walk. You know, mummies need downtime.
And it teaches children that there are methods to take downtime. Whereas I think in most families, the only downtime, as you say, is get the beer from the fridge or get the glass of wine out.
Yeah,
that means downtime.
Well, it means, and what happens is that the parents just mute the children for a while. And I think another thing with mother guilt, and I often see this also too when I'm talking with couples that are about to get married, and this illusion that you're supposed to like your children and your partner all the time.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a person on the planet you're going to meet, and you know, we can love people, but not always like all of their behaviours. And giving yourself permission to go, you know what, I need time out. Love you, but you're giving me the shits. I need to go for a walk. I'm going to yoga. I just need to reboot.
Yeah.
I don't like my children at the moment. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to threaten abandonment, but I just need to reboot. And often our tolerance, I love that HALT. You know, hungry, angry. Well, for women, I put hormonal as well, because, you know, when we're hormonal, in tribal cultures, women went to the red tent and had some quality girl time. They didn't get pissed there. They sat and collaborated and talked, and, the tribal men went fishing. I mean, the moon, we all menstruated together. Hormonal, let's bloody just debrief and have a cry and a laugh and and a bit of sisterhood support.
Yep.
And, men went fishing at that time, and it was happy days. Everyone reboots.
So important.
Yeah.
Have your separate time in your activity. And then that other guilt feeling of whenever I'm having time out, it has to be with my partner or it has to be with the whole family. Not so.
And that gets back to yes, date night's great, but make sure you're having one with yourself as well.
Absolutely.
That's
probably one of the biggest things I've learned in our talkings, is that time that you have to, even if it means scheduling it into your calendar, that is just your time with yourself.
We talk a lot about, you and I have been talked about Brené Brown, and if anyone that's watching this has never heard of Brené Brown, beautiful researcher on shame and vulnerability. We're kind of groupies, aren't we, really? I just love her stuff. And Russell Brand's another really good one. But The 5 Love Languages is another one that comes up a lot. Beautiful book by Gary Chapman. It's been around for a while now. But that's a good book to use if you're single on your own love languages with yourself. Because whilst people sort of, if you haven't heard of it, the 5 love languages are quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts and touch. Now, when we're the whole package, you do them all. When you're really connected with your kids, because being, words of affirmation, which can just be tonal, gentle words, acts of service and gifts can actually be through just quality time or, quality touch. It's kind of all interwoven. The biggest gift you can give somebody is quality time. And whilst it's great to know your top 2, often I say to people, have a look at the top 2 and the bottom 2. And the bottom 2 are probably areas of work, because we all tend to default to things that are easy for us. And love is about effort. The E in the word love is the effort one. When people say to me, oh shit, should it be this much hard work? Well, if you want evolution, and progress is about a labour of love.
That's it.
And the effort is, in the bottom 2, you and I both know with those 5 love languages, when somebody's connected on all levels, they're all happening. And the bottom 2 are usually the ones that we have the most resistant to for a reason. They're the hardest for us, and that's probably where we need to do, if you ask me to do bloody lunges or, I'm good at sit-ups, my upper half's good, but, if I have to do a pull-up or whatever else, the things we want to do the least are usually the areas where our work is.
Where the work is, yep. We've got to go there.
And
go within.
Absolutely. If you don't go within, you go without. We're full of the cliches. They're cliches for a reason, because they bloody make sense. They're timeless.
And Gary's written that the love languages with a focus on younger children and older children, and then adults. I didn't know that. All 3 categories, and just even if it's just for ideas around, if you haven't actively explored how you could give time to your children, how you could use words, I know it all comes naturally, intuitively, but sometimes, as you say, maybe there is a personality clash between a parent and a child, and it doesn't happen quite so naturally. Yes, he's written it for all the different ages and what it means for a child. So sometimes an adult is not able, maybe even fathers not able to put themselves in a child's shoes to understand what would really have real meaning for a child. Gary is able to look at it from through a child's eyes. I've even said to my girls once over breakfast, I say, have you ever heard of these things? How would you order it? Because at this stage in their life, everything gets ordered. Well, this one's first, that one's second, this one's third, fourth. Oh, they had a ball prioritizing it, but just for them to understand the different ways in which we show love, it helps them to communicate with the parent as well. Well, mine certainly do. And the one that I least expect to tell me she wants more physical touch, she was the baby who just sort of, when you held her, pushed away and
my firstborn
put
was
me
like
down.
That. Put me down. I've got shit to do. Mum, I don't want to hug you. Get off me.
And now she says physical touch is her number one. And then I go, oh, that surprises
Isn't
me.
that interesting? And my child that doesn't like the physical touch much is the one that holds on the longest when he hugs and tells me he loves me before he hangs up on every phone. So, you know, there's so much, and I think, you know, also too with our children, you know, if they're evolving and growing and learning, what they felt last year can shift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And I said to her, so the physical touch, I don't sense that. I would often come up and want to hold you and you're sort of a little bit... She goes, yeah, no, it's when I need it,
Yeah,
Mum.
on my terms. And it's good to know that. Just because I don't want it today doesn't mean I don't want it every day.
But then when she asks for it,
You better deliver.
I notice and hang on for that hug.
Yeah.
Not shrug that one moment.
Yeah. And that's always
awesome.
a good one, I think, regardless of where your touch is. You know, we've spoken about that. And I did it in a corporate workshop not long ago. And I always say, if your children hug you or your lover, anyone comes up for a hug, make sure you're the last to let go because they need it.
Yeah.
And when you're the last to let go, what that often does is let them know that you think they're worth the time and you're happy there. And we know, you know, I've got a client who's a drummer and, you know, the beat of a drum, you know, tribal drums are often, you know, the heartbeat of the tribe. And we forget often, or once our children grow, we know when they're little bubbies and they're like little koalas on our chest, they're just listening for that heartbeat because they've been in utero, they've had that beautiful tribal drum of the mother's heart. And I know when I lay on my husband's chest, there's something beautiful about just having he reckons he knows the tick of my heart. I don't actually hear the tick of his heart, but the vibration of that pulsing is such a calming thing that I can't get anywhere else on the planet. But I think, and what it does, you know, I say to clients, if you can make sure you have nothing less than a 7-second hug, especially clients that are having sexual issues in the bedroom, I say, well, I'm interested not so much in your sex life, but your intimate life outside of the bedroom. Because if you're not hugging, you're probably not passionately kissing. And so let's start with the hugging. And I've got clients that have been so out of sync that one's on morning hugs and one's on evening hugs, and they've set an alarm and they come and find the other and they stand there and they hug and they're awkward for the first 4 to 5 seconds. But if you go beyond that, then you get that beat of the heart, that rhythm of the heart.
Right.
And if you hold on for around 15 seconds, because if you think about it, colleagues, acquaintances, even parents sometimes will hug for around 4 seconds.
Yes.
And then you let go
Yes.
and usually hold your bottom out. You know, most people kind of just hug in the chest. It's just a polite thing. But the people that you hug for longer than 4 seconds and you stand there and you get that full body charge, that heart to heart hug, that's a reboot. That's, you know, it's a real gift that you can give yourself and others. And that's, you know, and I noticed when my therapist suggested it to me probably over a decade ago, I was insulted that he even had to suggest it, but I noticed I was always the first letting go in the hugs.
Yeah,
Didn't quite
I guess I'm
realise.
guilty of that too. Yeah.
It's an interesting one to do,
Yeah.
to hold on and see if you can be the last to let go. Elitha, another thing I've really noticed that I've watched heal in you doing your work, because, you know, I often say to clients, you know, with this recovery work, it's never too late to start. And if you've got the gift of desperation, which is the pain of staying as you are is getting too strong, and you've got intellect and a work ethic, you can apply, you know, your emotional fitness the same way you can apply physical fitness. And I think what's been really lovely to watch you in the healing, you know, of course, like most people don't get divorced because it's working and communication's great. And for many people when they're going through a divorce, the communication is stilted and you've got a lot of heartbreak with the children and both partners as you try and find a rhythm on how you're going to do the separated life. And I know it was a little tricky for you in the beginning, but what I'm also now knowing is you applying your own healing, that the father of your children, you know, and I often sort of say one of the biggest gifts of my recovery is that at my son's wedding, his groomsmen were his dad, his stepdad, and his brother. The father of my children is always welcome. He's a part of our tribe, and he's a beautiful man, and there's room for two men. But I know I had to do a lot of that work when I was single, and you've noticed that this beautiful healing with your girls and your ex has happened.
Absolutely. And I think it started, Cynthia, when you taught me that the father of your children is so important to them. And has a significant role in the lives of two girls like I have, and that no matter what issues we may have experienced as a couple, or what issues I personally may have had with him as a person, that is so irrelevant to his role as a father. And when I made peace with that, and I guess understood how important it is for him to be integral in their lives, and that I could see how he wasn't necessarily at that point in time fostering that and bringing that or facilitating that coming to fruition has been incredible. Yes, and being amicable, and as you say, open door policy, obviously with the required courtesy, etc. But the relationship that he has now established with them is more beautiful than anything I have ever seen, and they are happy. I can see they are happy. They are blooming as women. He adores them, and he can show them he adores them. He takes them on dates. He's taken them each separately to the Sydney Opera House.
Oh, wow.
Bought them beautiful coats and stayed at gorgeous hotels, and I wish that upon them.
Yeah, quality daddy time.
Wonderful.
There's a psychological theory that a little girl's first cross-gender, her first love affair is with her father's heart, and her first hero is her mother, and the boy's first love affair is with his mother's heart, and his first hero is his dad. And, whilst most of us look back at our exes in the early days, and we can list off all the shit they're getting wrong, because if they were getting it right, they wouldn't be an ex. And I think it's a really important thing, as we've spoken about, is even though we're separating from the children need to know that they can have their daddy or their mummy at their birthday party. Children really don't give a shit. They don't want to know what's going on behind closed doors. They just want to know mummy and daddy can be there at school functions, and sorry, I got a tickle. And they don't have to choose. And they don't have to take sides. And I often say to people, look, you can detox how shitty you are with your partner here with me. Feel free. Let's detox it all. So you don't have to carry it out that door.
That's it.
Because if you start doing a personal inventory on your children's mummy or daddy and bagging them, children feel often obliged to take a side. And also too, what they do is it really destabilizes their respect level. And I think even though the parent that might be bagging the other parent might have valid excuse, the children just want to believe that their mummy or daddy are doing their best, and that they didn't show up because they forgot, or they're having a hard time, but daddy still loves you. And I just think bagging the parent and vilifying the parent is not helpful to the child. I just don't see it that way.
I'm very lucky in that in our separation we've both managed to remain respectful, and the children were never in the mix as part of a power struggle. I can't even begin to imagine how much more difficult that would make the already traumatic and painful experience for the child of having to mourn the loss of this unity on top of that. Yes, and in the absence of that, they just grow their relationships with both parties.
Absolutely. And look, I'm very aware that the father of your children's a lovely man, and whilst he's a flawed man like many are, he did his best, and you made room for him, and that's now flourished. And look, some people watching this might have a spouse that's an addict or violent or abusive, and in those cases it's certainly not about sugarcoating what's going on. No. But a violent abusive partner or a partner with a raging addiction, again, you can find language for the child around, mummy or daddy is not well at the moment, they're struggling, the whole violence equation, again, daddy's or mummy's got some issues there. Let's hope they get some help. I know at a heart level, daddy doesn't really want us to be hurt and frightened, but he just doesn't know another way at the moment. And if he doesn't learn another way, we're going to have this distance, but let's just hope. That kind of language where, because, hope is an acronym, hold on, pain ends, and children need to know that parents are doing their best to try and find a peaceful way and a respectful way through. I think that's really what we need to try and model. And again, it's complex and there's no one size fits all, but I've just noticed in your journey of your healing of your relationship with yourself, and I always say to clients, when they come to me and they're in the death rolls of a marriage, and some clients will say to me, do you think, you're going to help me save my marriage? And I can say, well, I can help you, renovate your marriage to yourself. Now, how that plays out in your external world, all I know is if your marriage to yourself is one of respect, patience and tolerance, you'll be able to have that with your spouse, regardless of whether, there's, because sometimes there's been too much damage done.
Yeah.
And you've got to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not about giving up. It's about, people saying they stay together for the kids. If you've got a war zone going on, two disconnected parents that hate each other, sleeping in separate bedrooms, what are you modelling about marriage and partnership?
And that's exactly right. And that is what I think is so important. If the separation is civil and if you can find your way through it, then the children learn that you have a choice to be in a relationship. You're not in a relationship because you have to be there. You make a choice, and when things are not working, you can work at fixing it. And if it turns to that point where it doesn't work, you can walk away. You don't have to stay in a relationship for the wrong reasons, to the detriment of yourself and others around you. Yeah.
So it's a challenging time. Elitha, is there anything else that you'd like to unpack? Anything else that, in your recovery journey that you'd like to share with anybody watching this that you didn't know before you started the recovery journey that has been really helpful for you? Is there anything else or any other books that you've read? Because I know you watch a lot of, you do a lot of listening and studying yourself. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think the one caption headline that is always in my mind is, and thank you to you, the best is yet to come.
Don't we love that one? The best is yet to come.
Cynthia, and I have just been amazed over and over as I have been on a dating journey, and as I have thought, I think this is the man and he's wonderful, and then I discover there's something that does not work for me and I have to walk away. I can do that now, but I know the best is yet to come.
Absolutely. And I always say, as we often sort of say, when you're dating, if you think of the man or the woman as an assignment, because if they are being put in front of you, they are the one in that moment. And the whole adventure of a love story is no one gets a guarantee. But, we are damned, allowed to have a crack at our happily ever after. And, if you have a look at, and there's not a person I have worked with that's gone through a breakup that says, what if that was as good as it's going to get? Maybe I'm past my prime. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe what I'm looking for doesn't exist. I hear it every time. Because I think it's just a part of the process that we kind of go, well, maybe I'm fucked and I'm the common denominator, and maybe, and the reality is, and I've had to say, knowing that I was fucked at A, B, and C in my relationships has been the blessing, because the only person you can change in the world is you, and you can always do an upgrade. I can delete the virus that meant I was fucked at A, B, and C and learn D, E, and F, and then have a crack,
And to know that you're going to attract where you're at. Mm-hmm. When you start putting that energy out, that is going to come to it just is the case.
Yes, you attract what you believe you deserve.
And best is yet to come. I can't tell you.
We love that one. Well, maybe we'll end on that note. Thank you so much for your time, and we might have another chat to you in series 2, because I'm sure that I know you're on the precipice of maybe something exciting, and we might talk in series 2.
Watch the space.
Watch the space. Thank you, beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for watching. Bye.